All right, ready?
Yep.
Well, good afternoon. By vetoing the legislature's tax bill for 2012, the governor, I believe, just burned what may have been the last bridge to working cooperatively with legislators at the Capitol. And he should remember that the legislature is a co-equal branch of government. We may be elected a little differently, but we are expected under our Constitution to have just as much say about what happens around here as he does. And I think that it was terrible that he vetoed this bill because it was a bipartisan bill. We worked cooperatively with him when we put the bill together. He agreed to $51 million in this biennium in relief. He agreed that we would use the UCare money. He agreed that we would use some of the money from the Department of Revenue, and he agreed that we would use reserves as a down payment against the economic update from April. Showing $106 million for projected revenue in advance of what was projected for November. He agreed to those things, and he agreed to tax policy. And folks around here know that when you agree to tax policy changes, it is for the long term. It is not just for 1 year. Because we have taxpayers that are making decisions about whether or not to invest in the state's economy. And that was the whole purpose, was to get more investment in the private sector and to provide tax relief to property taxpayers in the state of Minnesota, and the governor vetoed that. And by vetoing the tax bill that he was sent just last night, he has vetoed a hiring program for Minnesota veterans. He vetoed homeowner property tax relief. For folks that are struggling with their property taxes, there would have been relief in 2012 for their property tax burdens. He vetoed tax relief for small business owners, gas station owners, tavern owners, coffee shop owners, hairdressers, you name it, Main Street, Minnesota, downtown Minneapolis, every business owner that has a physical presence in the state of Minnesota, he vetoed property tax relief for them. He vetoed tens of thousands of new jobs for the state of Minnesota by vetoing economic development projects that were underway in about 39 cities across the city of Minneapolis, or across the state of Minnesota. He vetoed tax credits for angel investors and data centers for historic site rehabilitation, and by doing that, he has stopped real investment and projects that would have created a surge in economic activity across the state and would have encouraged businesses from elsewhere across the nation to come here. He is squelching competition and our chances to compete nationally by vetoing this bill. And so I asked the governor, folks have been asking for your help. Are you ignoring their requests for real relief? Are you going to ignore all the businesses across the state of Minnesota that have been asking for years in the face of a very desperate economic recession for help from the state? Are you going to ignore them? I would say it's irresponsible what he did today. We made our priorities very clear. Tax relief for homeowners and property taxes was our highest priority. He vetoed our highest priority. And I think there will be consequences. I think that he has lost the trust of many of my colleagues in the legislature, and I don't know, frankly, how we can work with him again. I think Minnesotans equally will have lost the confidence of the governor by this veto. One other thing that I would remind folks of when you run your stories: will you remind your readers that when the governor had a State of the State address earlier this year, he called on us as legislators? Do you remember? He said, I say to legislators, let's take your best ideas and my best ideas and turn them into jobs, and let's do it now. This was our tax relief and jobs bill. These were our ideas that he said that he would agree to. He said he would work with us, and he pulled the rug out from under us when we presented a very good, high-quality, bipartisan bill.
I share Senator Ortman's disappointment, especially for small business owners. They're making decisions. This is a critical time during our economic upturn, if it is going to continue to be an upturn, but also for small business owners that are making critical decisions. You look at the upfront equipment exemption, you look at those angel investments, you look at the R&D tax credits. These are commitments or statements from us as a state to say this is what we see and what we value as good for our state, but also good for the future. You know, what are you going to do from a state standpoint to show us, to incentivize to us that this is a priority to you? The angel investment tax credits worked. They worked well last year. We worked very bipartisanly and very hard on that, and they worked. We included that in this bill as well. And property tax relief for those middle-class families that Senator Ortman spoke about, that is critical. And again, it may be a reaction to us, to the legislature, but this isn't just about Republican legislature. This is about all legislators. He has vetoed several pieces of legislation that have not just the Republican caucus in the House or in the Senate, but the Democrat caucus. The Democrat and Republican members of the caucus have been told no repeatedly, whether it's with the tax bill, whether it's with last in, first out, education reform. Probably one of the most puzzling for me, or two most puzzling, the annuity bill, which puts on probably some of the best and most protective safeguards in the country for senior citizens, had over 100 plus votes. I think it was 122, 112 votes in the House, was vetoed. And lastly, probably, and this one I don't understand, the technical corrections to the redistricting. You know, you've got a precinct of, I think, 10 people now in Stillwater. That has never been vetoed, at least in my recent memory, when you look back at these corrections, so that somebody's garage isn't in a different district than their bathroom. So again, it's disappointing for Minnesota business owners, especially small business owners, but families across the state. This was a reasonable tax bill, was going to be, I believe, something that we all could agree on and make each other, as the governor had said many times, make each other look really good instead of really bad. It's a disappointment, but it's probably most disappointing to Minnesota business owners.
You're hearing a lot of disappointment today, and I'm going to continue that theme. And I would just say this: you don't move Minnesota forward with a red veto pen. You just don't do that. That is what today the governor has chosen to do. Put that red veto pen to the best tax bill I think that we could have ever put together, and we put it together, and to give it the red veto pen. That does not move Minnesota forward. We have a state that is adjudged by others as the 44th worst business climate state in the nation. We had a chance with this tax bill to improve that rating by the tiniest of bit. The tiniest of bit. It's profound, but it's not profound to the point that moves that number very far. But the governor has elected, through this veto, not to do that. In the process, he has taken down what I think we would all agree to be the best jobs bill that this session will probably ever see. There's simply no question about it. This is an outstanding jobs bill. This would have put many, many people to work. The governor has chosen to take that down. I tell you what, for a guy from Rochester, I just don't understand this. I don't understand his motivation. It's frustrating, it's disappointing, it's disheartening. I think it's a slap in the face to the citizens of Minnesota. We can do better than this. We've got a couple days left of this session. Governor, I would simply ask that you step forward, offer some counter proposals which you know that we can work with you on, try to make something work. We need to move Minnesota forward. Red veto pens don't do that.
Senator Ortman, when you say there will be consequences, what are you referring to?
As I said, I think folks are losing confidence if they haven't already lost confidence in the governor's willingness to negotiate in good faith.
Mr. Speaker, does this
Are you talking about the stadium specifically or just in general?
I didn't mention the stadium, you did. I mentioned the tax bill. Well, there's still votes ahead. The governor's still looking for support. And I think people are looking at the end and saying, why would we help him with his priorities? He's made the Viking Stadium his #1 priority. We've said our priority should come first. That tax relief for all Minnesota businesses, small and large, and for property taxpayers, homeowners, should come first before we consider a big subsidy program for an out-of-state business that wants to build a new stadium here. That's my priority. I think there are many legislators that share that priority.
Mr. Speaker and Mr. Majority Leader, would you suggest that the governor talk to you before on this tax bill, before the Viking Stadium vote on Monday or Tuesday? Otherwise, the vote count might be affected on the Vikings bill?
I won't comment on that, but I think you should talk to us about the tax bill. You know, the fact that we have property tax relief in here for Minnesota families that was very similar to what we approved last year. You know, very smaller, much smaller amount, but very similar. You know, so I would suggest with Senator Senjem, talk with us about a bill that you absolutely can sign. Again, we thought we had agreement on the number and some of the provisions. Yeah, we absolutely had to work on, but again, this is one of yet another continued dismissal of the legislature. Again, the legislature, not our caucuses, the legislature's as a whole, their priorities. And that's what's disappointing, not just to the three of us, but to lots and lots of members. I mean, you look at some of those TIF districts that are not in any of our districts, but help some of these Minnesota districts, especially the Mall of America. I mean, the guys in the hard hats that were in here yesterday, I mean, that's one of the biggest jobs programs that you'll see, not only for the construction of the new phase, but then the jobs that will go in as the businesses move into the building. I mean, those are thousands of jobs, and they are continued jobs. Bonding bill, yes, there's a point in time where you build a building, it's up and it's running, and then folks go on to the next project. But once that expansion has been made, those are jobs that will then continue to be there. The R&D tax credits, the angel investment tax credits, again, companies that will then stay. So, I mean, I won't speak for Dave, but I think it's a good idea that, find something that we can sign for a tax bill, because that's our number one priority. His only priority is the stadium.
Mr. Speaker, I understand you're not the kind of person who issues threats, but might the vote count on the Viking Stadium be affected unless the governor is more receptive to what you folks say is your number one priority?
Well, I'd encourage him to call those legislators that are either a yes or a maybe and ask them.
I'm going to be a little hard. We have a governor that's called us unfit to govern. He's called us liars. He said we're sneaking around him on all kinds of various initiatives that we're trying to put forward. That gets a little tiring. And I would just say to this governor, we got a couple days left. It's not lost. We can work together. But we've got to put this kind of stuff aside. We've got to be willing to work together. Again, taking down this tax bill. Red veto pens don't move this state forward. Good work does. We've got a chance to do some good work. So, Governor, I would simply ask you, let's sit down and let's get some good work going here. The citizens of Minnesota deserve it. This was the best and is the best job program we could put forward this session. Now it's lost. Let's try to recover to the extent we can.
It sounds like you're ready to write another tax bill. At least what the Speaker said. Are you open to it? Something perhaps with the TIF money in it? And the governor said he's got $52 million on the table. Are you just going to walk away and it's available for tax relief? Are you just going to walk away and leave it on the table?
Well, again, when the negotiations are no, or yes, but then, well, maybe then no. What are our members left to think? There were a number of times where when we asked for, what would be your priorities? We're told, well, this isn't a priority, that's not a priority. So, I don't know, Bill. At this point, the veto and the message, again, was, as the senator said, it's disrespectful. I mean, you're either going to be willing to negotiate with people in good faith and speak to them in a way that's respectful of the offices that we all hold, or you're not. This veto and some of the comments from the letter are not.
I know you're angry, but
I would just add to that. There were a couple of occasions where, as you know, we reopened the conference committee report and made a couple of adjustments. That was at the direction of the Minnesota Management and Budget Office. They made recommendations for the way we made those language changes. We believed that they were heading in our direction. We had the commissioner and his assistant and others at the table. They never said a word. When the governor vetoed this bill this morning, he had not contacted Chair Davids or me. We learned on Twitter that the governor was planning to veto. I don't think that that's respectful of either Chair Davids or myself or those committee members or the members of the legislature that voted in support of these proposals.
even though he dissed you, would you be willing to go back to the table and see if you can negotiate something else?
I think that's the news of the day that Bill said dissed. Look, it's not a personality thing with me. It's for small business owners across the state. They've asked for us to say, look, I'm looking at a new piece of equipment, but if I have to wait 6 months to get that back, she told me, I'm sorry, then I can't do it. I can't wait for 6 or 7 months for the government to follow all these forms. And so if it was done, God bless you, if it was done, and actually goes into effect in July, a provision, again, to Senator Ortman's point, a provision the governor suggested, we took it, great, move it up, make it available in July 1st instead of waiting. But again, that was out the window. It was vetoed. So, On behalf of Minnesota business owners, absolutely, I'll keep trying, because that's what we came down here to do. But if we're told that our ideas are, I won't get into all the litany of words, but if our ideas aren't accepted, I don't know how we can keep trying and keep asking if we're continually told no, no, no.
Mr. Speaker, did you tell Roger Goodell you had 34 or 35 GOP votes for the stadium? No. Can you explain your statements of yesterday that you're for this, you want the stadium bill to pass, but you're not going to vote for it yourself?
Yeah, and I got I was on an interview that was a little hot and contested. I maybe my head got ahead of my mouth. Sometimes I'm amazed that I actually talked my wife into marrying me, so I misspoke. And I've always said that I think the Vikings are an asset. I want them to stay. But the bill in the current form is what I was talking about. And again, I said very clearly the other day that I can't support it in the form that it's in. So I misspoke. I was in an interview. We were going fast and furious. Made a mistake. Lately, I've been kind of off on my game. My crystal ball is off. Got a little ahead of myself. So, no, just a misstatement.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you also said that you wanted to be on the 50-yard line to celebrate with the governor, so why not vote for the bill?
No, I said, when asked, do you want to deny him his win, I said, no, I think he should be there on the 50-yard line flipping the coin. If the stadium passes, if it's signed into law. I didn't say I wanted to be there with him. I said, the question was, will you deny him because he's a Democrat governor? And I said, absolutely not. I think that's petty and small.
I had a question. Is it time for us to sit down with Apple and all the big business leaders and sit down with the AFL-CIO in Washington and say, what do we need to do to become globally competitive? Like the bill that was introduced to just keep the teachers that were the best scoring. And I think, for us to be competitive as a country, a lot of people say that the governor is a union's puppet. And I'm saying that a lot of things that he does are reflective of what the unions want.
Let me just say, for goodness sakes, we have some wonderful people in this institution. We have a governor that needs to learn to work with them. If we do that, we'll be just fine. We can solve these problems in Minnesota. We don't need to go to Washington to solve our problems. We can solve them right here. All we need is a little cooperation from this governor.
Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.